Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Coffee Table Talks. Today, we're talking with Damon Small, also known as Chef, in the operational technology space. With me, as always, is Will McCullen, the program manager for the IT Center for Excellence at PIMA Community College in Tucson, Arizona.
You're really
Good
good at
morning, Jed. We see you there in the chat. Thank you. The chat is live. You can put in your comments, good mornings, well wishings. Tell us about how your day is going, how your week's going, what's going on, kind of thing. You can do that from LinkedIn, Twitch, or Facebook, I believe. Actually, the comments come in through, but anyhow. So, or YouTube. And YouTube, how's the YouTube? Did you test it out, Will?
Yeah, I
thank
just put it
you.
in there. We're good.
Perfect. That's great. And if you're new here, hi, I'm Rachel Arnold. I'm the Human API with SecureNation. I'll pop that up for you guys. You guys feel free to click on that. It's not going to lead you anyplace Sketchbox. It's a LinkedIn. That's it. Smash the follow button and you'll get all of the updates about our events and all the other good things that we've got going on over here. Now, special guest, David Small. Okay, so a little bit of background on how David got here. All right. So I was slinking around at some conferences and I noticed this very fast moving, speedy little guy in a pair of chef pants all the time. It's restaurant grade chef pants. And the reason why this actually got my attention, and I didn't get to tell you this, Damon, is because I came from the restaurant industry.
Oh,
I automatically recognized. I was like, well, that's neat.
I'm wearing them now. So I have my chili pepper chef's pants on. Yeah.
I love it. So one, I never get to talk to you when I see you running through conferences ever. Cause you're like, you're just this little, you're so busy.
Well, I'm usually working. I'm either about to get up on stage or I'm volunteering in some other capacity. So when we were chatting earlier, Rachel, yeah, it's like we were in New Orleans together at NOLACon. Shout out to one of my favorite conferences. And yeah, and just as an aside, if you remember that venue, the venue was right next door to the Hard Rock Cafe.
Yep.
So that became a game. My friends that I was traveling with and my wife were challenging me to try and sneak in the back door to see if I could social engineer my way into the kitchen. Because
that's illegal, and we don't do that.
No, I would. That's why I didn't. But I do have my skull cap as well, and just in case I have a bad hair day, I can put my skull cap on as well to complete the look. So you can see, Chef has taken on a life of his own.
Yeah, it's awesome. Anyway. So did you also work in the restaurant industry for a while?
Never professionally, but I grew up in southern Louisiana, and my mom taught me how to cook in the kitchen. My dad taught me how to cook at the camp. So cooking has always been I enjoy the heck out of it because once you get in the kitchen and you're prepping everything and you get everything lined up and ready to go, it's just this zen moment to get every dish to come up at the same time. It takes a lot of planning and execution, and I just love that. Like, and don't tell anyone this, but I love cleaning my kitchen too, because suddenly when you start cleaning, everybody disappears. And so selfishly, I just like the focus that it takes. So I have fantasies when I retire someday or something, maybe doing some formal training, but no, I'm just a very enthusiastic home cook. And through I've worked with the Packenacking Village at DEF CON for a long time, and that's where I earned the handle chef because they figured out that I like to cook. And so it just stuck. They just, how DEF CON is. They just started calling me chef, and so now here we are. So I think my enthusiasm is greater than my skill, I think, but I really like cooking. Go Tigers! Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Someone saw my LSU.
For those who are not in Louisiana and don't understand that, no, we're not misspelling the word go. Okay. This is a thing. It's a thing. All right. Just trust it. Just go with the thing. Okay. So Dan, what is your absolute favorite meal to serve, like to cook for a group, for like family, friends?
Yeah, so I have two answers for you. In fact, we've got a friend coming to visit in the coming days, And I stole this recipe from my dad. It can use any kind of protein, usually some sort of chicken, or for the Louisiana folks, duck works really well if you can get it. And you basically brown the chicken with the Cajun Trinity, which is diced onion, celery, and bell pepper.
Mhm.
And then once you've got that kind of browned, dump in a bunch of cream of mushroom soup with some other things, spices and whatnot. And it's super simple. It's just this big old pot of yumminess, kind of like it's gumbo, but a little more simple to prepare.
Yeah.
So I would do that, and I will also say the first thing that I ever prepared that my mother came to me for advice for, that was like a pivotal moment when my mother admitted that I prepared something better for her. I've got a technique for flank steak, which is a cut of beef that my mom swears I cook better than her. And you can imagine when your mom calls you, it's like, "Hey, I need some advice in the kitchen." I'm like, "What?"
That's a moment. Is that not a moment?
I still, I mean, she still calls me from time to time on that one dish particularly. So those are my two things: the cream of mushroom chicken and flank steak. If I had to, those are my two go-tos.
Well,
All right, now I'm hungry.
David,
Yeah, I know.
you're not too far away. So now we're gonna have to have a cook-off because one fun fact about the CEO, fearless leader of Secure Nation, is that is a foodie. Okay, John Davis, absolutely 100% foodie.
Oh my
All
word.
about it, cooking it, eating other people's cooking, going out.
Yep.
One of his favorite things to do in Baton Rouge is he will go to these like little family-owned restaurants and take pictures of whatever it is that he's gotten and blast them out on all of his social medias and stuff, and he just raves about them. So he,
Oh, no kidding, no kidding.
Yeah.
Right? Remember GERCON?
Mhm.
Right? We all come back after it. You know, it's late at night, and we go out and we're talking on the porch and that kind of thing. And says, "Oh, come on back in." It's like flipping Thanksgiving. I mean, it's got potatoes and steak and green beans and carrots and just all laid out on your plate right there at the table. And it's like, what? Yeah, he's definitely a foodie.
Well, Rachel, there's this particular place that I found in New Orleans. So again, NOLACon, shout out to NOLACon. I love that conference. I grew up in Lafayette, Louisiana. So New Orleans is not far away from Lafayette. But anyway, there's this place that has shrimp and grits, and they have a cream lemon sauce that they put in with the shrimp and grits. I've tried for years to figure out how they make that thing, and I'm not even close. But someday I'm going to figure out how they make that sauce. But if you're in New Orleans, go get shrimp and grits somewhere. It's such a wonderful dish, and I'll master it someday. Darn it, yeah.
Hang on, I'm finding some pictures real quick, and I'm gonna let Will see them on Signal. Hold on, and then let me pull this up over here. One sec. How am I going to do this? I want to share, but I only want to share that one thing. I don't want to, because then you guys are going to have like Inception. It's going to be.
All right.
Let's see. There we go.
Nice.
Yeah. So that was the table, right? We've got, and Will's right here. And if anybody wants to know how excited and enthused Will was about his food, this is my It was awesome. Yeah. It was such a good time. So you're gonna have to come, and that's now gonna be one of my things I'm gonna look out for, is for Chef and John Davis to cook. I
would love it, and it's you can make a lot of metaphors between cooking food and cybersecurity. Believe it or not, I know it sounds like a stretch, but that's part of how I got my nickname to begin with. And if anyone can find it, good luck to you. But me and my son, when my son was like 8 years old, I made a video comparing breakfast tacos to incident response. And I know you're thinking like, what the heck do those things have to do with each other? And it was all about, if you've ever made breakfast Thai, it's all about preparation. And I was trying to teach my son that you have to spend more time preparing to do the thing than you do actually doing the thing. And in the kitchen, that's really important. Like prep should take longer than once you're ready to go, the dish just comes together if you know what you're doing. Incident response is the same way. So I know that's kind of a forced analogy, but anyway, here we are.
I thrive on those kinds of analogies, and I managed kitchens in my restaurant industry career, and managed bars and schedules and people and prep shifts and lunch rush and dinner rush and stuff like that. So no, it is an orchestrated thing that if it's done right and done well, it scales no matter how many people are at the door. Because you plan. There's a lot of planning, right? Always.
Well, and everybody knows what their duty is. Everybody knows what they're responsible for, and
right. They all have their own station and their role, and they're part of a bigger machine, right? To put this out. And I think it's a great analogy for incident response.
Yeah, we should write a cookbook. Yeah.
That would be quite the cookbook, actually. My brain just exploded a little bit. So.
Oh, sorry about that. It's kind of early in the day for that, but okay. Well, it's Friday. We've got the weekend to recover, so it's good.
So tell us a bit about your passion.
There we go. Thank you, Will. I was like, how did you like? Nah, I'm not gonna be a cook, but operational technology, yeah, buddy.
I, like a lot of people in our industry, I think, just because of my proximity. I live in Southeast Texas, right? So the two biggest industries in the Houston area are oil and gas, number one, closely followed by healthcare. And so just when you become a professional computer nerd, as we are, you kind of go to where the industry is. So as in my role as a consultant, and even before then as a security architect in healthcare, you learn about those industries that you're supporting. So I am always reluctant, being an IT person that kind of learned the OT side. I know a lot of folks that started out as operators in refineries, for example. And so I would be reluctant to call myself an expert, because I think there's so much emerging in the OT space. And as we talk about integrating OT and IT, we're kind of still in the Wild West in many ways. So it was just a function of where the work was coming at me. So I had to get credible in a hurry when I was talking to energy and oil and gas clients, right? And it's also, well, and you haven't asked, but I mean, one question folks might have is, what is OT? I don't know if we want to chat about that for a minute, because
definitely.
So operational technology is, think about factories and refineries. I mean, for the Louisiana folks, Louisiana and Texas, we got refineries all over the place, and drilling operations. It could be food manufacturing, traffic control. So all that industrial control stuff, the industrial control systems, is what runs those factories. I'll probably use the term factory or refinery kind of broadly, but it could apply to a lot of different ways. So the operational technology is that stuff, and that's in contrast to the information technology that a lot of us are familiar with. A lot of us in this industry started out in the IT side. And so IT would be more like the business systems, web servers, email, file and print, those sorts of things. The OT stuff is usually, like I said, on the factory floor. The problem of securing those information assets has been exacerbated by the advancement of technology. So used to, you'd protect OT by virtue of the fact that it wasn't connected to anything. If you wanted to gain unauthorized access to an OT network, you'd have to hop over a fence with razor wire on top of it, and there'd be some person with a dog and a gun waiting for you on the other side of the fence. It was all about physical security. Well, now the technology is such we can connect these operational networks to the business network. And that's the OT-IT convergence that people talk about in my part of the industry a lot. And you might say, well, that makes it less secure. Why would you want to do that? Well, by being able to consume that operational information by the business, now the business can make very, very good decisions based on the telemetry that's coming out of the factory or the refinery. And it introduces a lot of efficiency, makes the business better at doing whatever it is that it does. And so there are very compelling reasons why you want to connect OT with IT, even though it very clearly changes the threat landscape. So anyway, that's my lecture on what OT is and why we should care. Even if you don't work in that part of the business, you know, from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to bed, our lives are affected by operational technology.
So would you say
kind of a big deal?
Would you say it's kind of fair to say, and just for general folks out there, right, that when you have your computer at home, when you're working on a computer and what your computer connects to as far as servers, that's stuff that's a huge target all the time, right? We get either phishing, malware, you know, don't click on this and all that kind of stuff. And it's loaded with features. It's loaded with things that a lot of people are working on all at the time. But OT, right? You kind of have, all right, I've got this controller for the HVAC that controls flaps going back and forth. Well, that's not quite as interesting, and that's not quite as yummy for everybody to go after. So it doesn't get as much attention.
It doesn't get as much attention because it's not as intuitive a target. As you just said, Will, that if people want to go after the low-hanging fruit, and those tend to be consumer devices. If you're wanting to spread a virus, you know, as just one simple example, those are more attractive targets. But the thing is, if you contrast the state of the industry back when I started my career in the 1990s. So I'm looking, no old guy jokes. I'm watching you. In the 1990s, a lot of the activity of the adversary was high-tech vandalism. Right. They would deface web pages, and they would, you know, you'd have viruses like Michelangelo that would make the text fall down. You know, silly stuff that wasn't really hurting anything. Now, fast forward 30 years later, this is organized crime. Let's be clear. I'm not being dramatic. This is organized crime. There are groups of criminals that are extorting information through ransomware and other techniques. And although the OT targets are a little bit more difficult to get to, it's sort of the high risk, high reward scenarios that if they can penetrate into such an environment, the payout could be enormous. Right. So, and let's call it what it is. I mean, follow the money. I mean, all of us here that are part of this conversation today, hopefully we're using our powers for good. But there's a lot of people that want to disrupt people in this country, in the United States or North America, or, you know, I'm not going to turn this into a political discussion, but there are people that want to make other people's lives difficult. And that's one way to do it.
Yeah, the hitting the workstations and all that kind of stuff, you can get into people's lives, people's information and that kind of stuff. OT, however, you can make major things happen if you get to the more critical spots. Everything from controlling water, how much chemicals thrown in, to major pieces of equipment that can cause catastrophic effects, to all sorts of things.
I don't have the details in front of me because we're just enjoying a cup of coffee, right? So, so we're kind of shooting from the hip here. There was not long after the Colonial Pipeline incident happened, if y'all remember that, there was a water treatment facility, I think it was in the southeastern United States, where somebody gained unauthorized access to one of the operator's workstations through a remote. It wasn't RDP specifically, but it was some sort of remote access software that was installed on this workstation, and the adversary was able to change the amount of chemicals that were being put into the treated water. Had that attack not been thwarted by a very observant operator that happened to notice that the mouse was moving around on the screen and he wasn't doing it. John says Florida. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Florida, actually. Yeah, John's right. And had that change gone unnoticed, the chemical would have eventually become toxic to human beings. So that should, now fortunately the process worked. The human is smarter than the computer, and they say, no, we're not supposed to be doing that. And, the process was stopped. But imagine that if an adversary from the other side of the world or anywhere with an internet connection can start messing with the things that we as humans consume, whether it's water or food or anything else. I mean, that's frightening. I mean, so when we talk about information warfare, that's not being melodramatic. It's real. And that's why Colonial Pipeline and the water treatment plant in Florida was such a big deal, because I think it kind of made us all realize that this isn't the stuff of science fiction anymore. This is real, and it's happening. And what is easier, to get a hold of, weapons and, attack a country that is kind of separated from Europe and the rest of the world, or can we just hop on the internet and attack them that way?
Yeah, actually,
our adversaries, they're going to take the most efficient way possible.
I pulled up a Reuters article about the water treatment plant that you're describing, and it was they figured out it was a terminated employee at a Kansas-based water facility used his old computer credentials he attacked the water treatment facility in Florida, but from Kansas.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. I didn't. Okay, that's good. I'm glad you figured that out. Yeah. So, which is kind of what we suspected, actually. It was probably, yeah. And never, we don't even have to talk about why you don't want to use shared credentials. This is why.
Or like, how come, I mean, how do you let something like that fall through the cracks, though, whenever you're offboarding an employee?
No, I mean, there are broken processes, obviously, and I wish I could say that I have never in my 30-year career worked for an organization that had inefficient or ineffective onboarding or offboarding, but I think it's the human condition. I always try to be reluctant to blame human beings for things that are not individually there. But I mean, you're not wrong. The question is very valid. How in the world can that possibly happen? You term an employee, they no longer work there, so make sure that employee doesn't have access to all the things, right? I mean, it should be obvious, and yet it happens with frightening regularity, doesn't it? And it's not sexy, right? It's not fun to talk about, the processes you have to go through when someone joins an organization or leaves an organization. And Rob comments, offboarding issues happen more frequently. Yeah. Well, I'm a cynic, so I think they happen every bloody day. But yeah, Rob, I agree with Rob.
Well, also, you brought up another point. You talked about service accounts, right?
Oh, man. Yeah.
Kind of, especially because it's controllers and things like that. A lot of this doesn't have the same complex multi-user aspect to it, right? It's like a controller that is connected to a main operation system, and so it doesn't have that much complexity. It's just, how does the main operation system connect to that little device that is controlling a valve, or is, something along those lines. That's got to be hard to deal with, right?
It is. And also keep in mind that these are purpose-built devices. So you talk about the little device, you're probably talking about a PLC, a programmable logic controller, which is a thing a piece of equipment that has one freaking job. Maybe it's to turn a valve on or off. It's got or maybe it's gathering telemetry from a wellhead. I've got an interesting wellhead story. If we have time for it, I'll tell it. But, they have very specific things and they're purpose built. So they are expecting very specific types of information to come across the network. And there's usually not a lot of time spent in designing those devices to deal with those edge cases. So a lot of times, if something unexpected happens, the PLC in this example will fail. It won't know what to do. It will fall over. And now you've created a failure condition and you hope like heck, well, which is better? Do you want it to fail open or fail closed? I mean, it depends on what it's doing. Who knows? Here's the thing for the IT folks that are listening to us today. If you're curious about what makes OT differently, a lot of us in IT, we understand the CIA triad, right? Confidentiality, integrity, and availability in that order. Those are the things in IT. If I'm protecting information assets in a business network, that's what I care about. As it turns out, in OT, it's the opposite. You are concerned about availability first, then integrity, and then confidentiality last. And you would think, well, that doesn't make sense. Why is that? Well, think about the manufacturing process or the refinery or, et cetera, et cetera. Those jobs, that organization exists to produce something, to manufacture something, to refine something, whatever it is. And the availability of all those components is king. That's what keeps the business functioning. That's what keeps the revenue coming in and all the employees getting paid, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So availability is number one. And as an IT person, when I first started learning about OT a decade or so ago, oh yeah, Jack, it needs to work first. The rest is an afterthought. Yeah, I think that's correct. I mean, if it's not functioning, then it doesn't matter the integrity or the confidentiality of the data. So that's what. Oh, sorry. Now I've distracted myself. I forgot what you asked me, Will. But yeah, that's one way to think of it. Is know that the CIA triad is upside down in OT because there's a different set of priorities that those men and women have that are working in those environments. So it is hard. And it's not like you can just say, well, second Tuesday of every month, just update all your Windows boxes and call it a day. In a refinery, for example, you might get an outage window once every 18 or 24 months. And the rest of the time, you can't take those systems down because it'll either shut part of the operation down and cause people to lose jobs. Or if it's a safety critical system, dude, do you want to be the guy or gal that puts a patch on a Windows box that takes a safety system down and now human life is at risk?
No, absolutely not.
I didn't sign up. No. That's not what I want to do. So you have to treat those control systems very, very much differently than we treat the business systems over in the IT side of the world. And so you end up with a lot of mitigating controls. It's like, okay, I can't patch this server, but I can put a web app firewall in front of it, maybe as one example. There's other things you can do. So you really, the whole defense and depth thing becomes very, very important in those OT environments as a result.
Oh, yeah. And that's, if I understand this correctly, right, that's some of the biggest difficulties in OT is the responsibility that's involved, the criticality. My mind just wanders. If you imagine some systems that are controlling, say, a copper smelter, if all of a sudden that goes down or whatever, and everything cools at the wrong time, you got big chunks of solid metal, all that could have been taken out by some small systems, right? Yeah, or hospitals or farming equipment. Plant the seed too shallow, plant the seed too deep. I mean, OT is everywhere, right?
It is. Do a thought experiment. Next time, like I said, from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, OT is all around us. Before we went on the air, the three of us were talking about the traffic lights. Most traffic systems and those are controlled by PLCs, the same PLCs that we have in those factories and refineries. So, imagine all the lights going green, or I think we did mention it earlier, actually, all the lights going green or red, it would, if I have to go to the drugstore and buy a new toothbrush, well, how did that toothbrush get there? It was on a truck, probably. Trucking systems are controlled by operational technology, and it was manufactured in a factory somewhere. So you can't, in this modern world in which we live, you can't get through a day without being dependent on these things all day. The coffee we're drinking now, how did it get there? How was it made? And everything. And it's a fascinating thing to realize. I mean, the good news is we have a wonderful quality of life in this modern world, but it is very dependent upon technology. And when the zombie apocalypse happens, what are we going to do then? Well, I'll just maybe that'll be my first job as a cook. I'll finally become a cook because, and my wife is a seamstress, so she'll make our clothes. So we've got that part covered up. But do you know what I mean? Like, we have to recognize the more dependent we become on technology, the more we have to realize the downside to that and prepare for when the technology fails or is attacked. And it's
I've come across
I don't mean to make it. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was just going to say I don't want to make it sound all dystopian and everything, but I mean I think part of our job as professionals in this industry is recognizing how dependent we are on these things, and then if we work within an organization, it's our job to help the organization understand that it's always cheaper to recover from an incident. Oh, sorry, I had that backwards. It's always cheaper to prepare for an incident than it is to recover from it.
Right.
So if a system is responsible for $350,000 of revenue per hour, then you can spend up to that amount protecting it, and you're still coming out ahead. So I think that's another drum I like to beat in a forum like this is we can't expect the business leaders to learn the language of computer science. We have to learn the language of business. And for we computer scientists, we don't want to hear that because, like, look, I'm the biggest nerd in the room. I want to do the nerd things, but guess what? That's not how we're going to get the attention of the boardroom.
Right. I agree. 100%. I was going to say, what I was going to say was that it's funny that you mentioned zombie apocalypse. There are so many people in our industry that I've come across that they have these wonderful hobbies that I'm collecting them secretly to the side. And we're going to have, because their hobbies are things like forgery, like, and not the illegal kind. Like, I mean, like they have a forge.
Forging,
and they know how to, they do metalworking. Or
they probably have a crucible and they're melting aluminum cans. Yeah, that's amazing. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Josh, my husband, he's actually a senior SOC analyst for a company, and he also is very talented with a traditional bow. So I'm just saying, I'm collecting these things and these people. I'm planning off to the side, and I think I found my chef, so I'm happy about it.
Well, Rachel, excuse me, Rachel, you bring up a good point. I mean, I'm sure all three of us here spend a lot of time at security conference. I know y'all recently were at GurCon. Once again, I missed GurCon. That's one show that I hope to go to someday.
We're going next year. I'm gonna ping you like 3 months in advance. Don't forget your tickets, man. They sell out every year.
I know. Well, I love the sound of my own voice, if that's not obvious by this point. But maybe if I can get up on stage as a presenter, that'll help get me in there. But no, you meet people in this industry, and when you say you work in IT or you work in cybersecurity, that can mean a lot of things, right? And isn't it fascinating? Every person I've met at every conference I've ever been to has these interests outside of the computer science part that are always fascinating. Like, I can't remember which, it might have been at DEF CON one year. I can't remember. There was a guy that I saw all over the place, and he was making his own yarn from raw wool. He had this bit, and he was just walking around, making yarn. And by the end of the thing, he had this skein of yarn that he had made while he was walking around the show. And I'm like, that is awesome. I'm not as into thread arts as my wife is. Like I said, she's a seamstress, but I knew what he was doing. And I'm like, that is so cool. We are an interesting cohort of people in this industry, aren't we?
Other fun talent, reasons why you should collect Josh Arnold for your doomsday apocalyptic team. He also makes mead. He makes mead. Yeah. So we brought a couple of bottles with us to GurCon, and Will got to try some.
Good stuff.
Nice.
Good.
Oh, was it? I think that's made from honey, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's also really good because our neighbor is gluten-free, right? And we found out that it's good. She can have it. I have another.
She can have mead, but not beer, right? Because beer's got a lot. Got it.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
And then my other friend is has a negative reaction to the tannins in wine and certain alcohols. It's a very bad, so she doesn't drink very often, which is fine. Like, I'm not trying to convince people to drink more, but she was able to enjoy a glass of mead with us because it doesn't have that. It just doesn't. I'm just saying, mead is the lifeblood. Okay, guys, like I've got gallons. Y'all come over.
Okay, well, my pastime is utterly useless for surviving zombie apocalypse, but I can help with a party. Because I'm dancing, right?
Yes, it would be very entertaining. Will and I will sing and dance. Will will dance. I will look like I'm having some sort of seizure, but I will sing. I will sing. That'll be fine.
I mean, those of us that live along the Gulf Coast in particular will know what it's like to quickly organize a hurricane party right before the storm comes inland. I've done that a time or two. Somebody chatted, how long do you think it'll take Louisiana to try cooking a zombie and eating it? Yeah. I'm surprised. Well, not long at all. As long as you know how to make a roux, I'm sure it'll come out fine. It's kind of like roadkill gumbo,
Yeah. I actually came across, there was like a Cajun cookbook where it showed you how you had to remove all of these glands from squirrel or raccoon, one or the other, before you cooked it. And it was fascinating. There's so many. If you miss any, it makes the meat taste terrible, but you have to get them all out. It's like some kind of, I don't know, like sweat producing gland. And if you leave it in there, it's not okay. I was like, I'm not eating that, but that's a good read.
Yeah. Well, actually, as it turns out, preparing alligator is very, very difficult as well. There's a lot of non-edible things that you have to get out of the meat. It's really easy to make alligator poorly, is what I learned. And that's what I let a professional butcher take care of that, because as it turns out, it's really hard. So
yeah. Yep.
Let the pros do it, kids.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So if you have any operational technology concerns, reach out to Damon Chef Small.
Yeah. and let us know. Well, there's another interesting angle of, I don't want to, completely change the topic, but as it relates to OT, before we went on the air, the three of us were talking about the role of academia in this whole problem of trying to protect information assets. And I recently started working with the University of Houston. Shout out to the Cougars. And I'm teaching routing and switching classes. And it occurred to me that when I was a young practitioner, there wasn't classes that I could take. I mean, there was computer science and computer engineering, but that didn't really address cybersecurity at all. So those of us that have been around cybersecurity for a while, we've just been kind of making this up as we went along, haven't we? I mean,
in IT, is anyone an expert, really? It's changing all the time. Isn't that kind of IT in general?
Right. No, it is. And as soon as you write a curriculum for a class, you deliver it that first semester and it's out of date. Like you're halfway through the semester and I'm like, oh, this is wrong. Dang. All right.
Yeah, if it's in a book, it's too old.
Yeah, for real.
I'm starting to understand why there are so many people that are passionate about history. It's there. It's the same all the time. It's very dependable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So now that we're in this situation where what used to be separated is now joined, and is probably, my guess would be, happening at a more rapid pace because, oh, hey, let's just connect this to this, and now we can have all these metrics. We can have ease of operation and yada yada yada. With where this is going, what do you see as some of the solutions, or is it running out of control?
No, I think we have to admit to ourselves, and I'm going to use the term computer scientist kind of broadly, so that includes any of us that work in, because, I don't like to call myself a computer engineer because I don't have an engineering degree. I have a Master of Science. It's like, it gets weird. So, all right, let's just call ourselves, we're all computer scientists. If we put our hands on a keyboard and that's what we do, then we're a computer scientist. All right, now that we've said that, we have to admit to ourselves that the business runs the business. And as soon as they decide that they can derive value out of having access to this information that's coming out of the OT stack, that bell has been rung. We're not going to put that genie back in the bottle. Like, how many worn out expressions can I use? So that's going to happen. So what I think we need to do, actually, what we can do better than the business can, and here's the thing, I hope I'm right. Let's come back and revisit this video in a couple of years.
Okay.
The answer lies in valuating the information asset. Okay, what the hell does that mean? The information asset is not the servers and the workstations and routers and the switches. I'm talking about the business data that the business is consuming. That's the information asset. So I've got a database server and it's got a bunch of telemetry coming from a PLC from the wellhead. And that information is really important because I need to know the pressure inside the wellhead and the temperature and all those things to make decisions about, is it operating as efficiently as possible? Great.
Yeah,
right?
The matrix that decisions are based off of, right? Critical decisions.
How much is that information asset worth? And I alluded to it earlier. Once we understand the valuation of the information asset, we understand how much we can spend to protect it. Because again, preventing an incident is going to be cheaper than recovering from it. So whomever figures out how to evaluate information assets within the context of the business, I think that's going to be the next corner we're going to turn. In figuring out, and Rachel's right. Yeah, I mean, these are decision-making processes that we've understood for a very, very long time. I just don't think we've done a great job at applying that in the realm of computer science, in my humble opinion. Maybe other people are good at it, and I just don't know. So I might be the knucklehead here, and that's fine. But does that make sense? I mean, again, it's every time I bring this up, and I've had conversations with other professionals before too, and I was like, yeah, evaluating information assets. And it's like, oh, well, you buy a server and you depreciate it over 36 months and then you throw it away and you buy another one. I'm like, no. I don't care about the hardware. I care about what the hardware is doing. Like, why did some business unit buy it in the first place? And that's what happens whenever I'm in the boardroom asking people that. That's what you get, is the stunned silence. People's like, oh, it seems like an obvious question, and yet it's one that's surprisingly difficult to answer. Isn't that? Or maybe tell me if I'm daft and we've already figured this out and we can move. But I don't think we have as an industry.
Which one is inexpensive? And oh, hey, it's way out in the middle of nowhere. So can we just throw that on the internet and then connect to it through just standard VPN?
Right. Yeah. Or the one I love, it's like, why do we need to replace it? We've been running this system for 17 years and it works fine. So it doesn't, it's like, yeah, okay. Well, probability is not cumulative. So
And
just because nothing.
Yeah. How much
Or replacing it. Yeah.
How much difficulty do you get with, say the folks that make all this stuff not keeping it up to date or keeping up with CVs and that kind of stuff?
Oh, you mean like end of life stuff, legacy, all those fun, flashy, businessy, corporate words. End of life. You're like, what does end of life mean exactly? I'm like, well, it means they're not really paying attention to the vulnerabilities anymore, and they're not going to send you any patches for it. That's what it means.
We don't want to support that anymore.
Yeah, that's end of support.
That's why the term when a product becomes sunsetted, I love that one, because that's way more gentle. It's like a sunset. Oh, it's beautiful. It's don't worry. It's like
I was actually coached because I put a report together for some executives that I needed to stop using terms like end of life. That seemed too dramatic, and I was like, I'm like, what are these?
What?
Are these people so like soft that they can't face words that may hurt their ill feelings? Like,
yes, right.
No, I don't want to use sunset because that does seem very gentle and lovely. No, I need money and funding now. This is end of life situation. Right. This is not okay, guys.
Right.
Like, I'm not gonna sugarcoat this shit. Isn't that how a lot of people get it? Wow, I used a curse word for the first time today. Look at that. But like, isn't that how this gets so screwed up? We had I have another example of a team that was utilizing a free license for a critical data pipeline, and for years. And thank God this vendor was so lovely, right? I put a post out earlier this week about how important it is to have, really good in-place vendor relationships and work through, some conflict resolution together before you just rip and replace stuff. But anyway, so I had his data pipeline in place, right? Off of a free license, shoestring and duct tape kind of situation. And
right.
Never happens.
It had been submitted 3 years in a row for funding to buy the fully licensed version of this. And it was always not approved. Never. And I was like, you know what? We're gonna save some money over here and save some money over there, and then we're gonna pull it together and we're gonna get this done. We're gonna get it done. Right. And they were all like, well, that wasn't approved. And I'm like, I don't care. I absolutely do not care. Okay? I don't care that wasn't approved. You're going to shoot yourself in the foot so hard right here. Like, I'm saving your life. Just let me save you from disaster, please. That will be excellent. And all of your architecture and engineering team also wants to save you. Let it happen. Just
help me over there. Help you. Help me help you. That's
oh my gosh,
what we're trying to do. Well, I think maybe we need to get better at how we message those sorts of things. Like, look, as an IT professional or OT professional, either way, like, I don't want to create work for myself. I'm not saying we need to implement new systems so I have more stuff to do. Like, my end game is to have zero stuff to do. I don't want to, if I could completely automate my job and still get paid, I would do that. So when I go to the business and say, we need to implement more technical controls or replace this, whatever, it's like, look, I realize I'm making more work for me. I don't want that. So if I'm asking for it, I must be serious,
Yeah. I'm not asking for stuff because I'm sitting over here bored.
Yeah, I know. Right. Like, dude, Minecraft ain't going to play itself. I got things to do. And yet here I'm talking to you. So.
On the flip side of that, I've also walked into teams before that have asked for my specific help and consultation, where the cybersecurity team, this one kills me every time. the cybersecurity team was looking at a tool replacement for a feature that they were really hoping for. And, I got down into the, crafting the technical and functional requirements with that team so that we could check off those boxes whenever we were shopping together for a replacement. Right. And we go through all these things, and one of the technical requirements needed to be validated by the network team. So I went over to the network team, was introduced, and told them, my purpose and why I was there, and hi, how are you? And we would really appreciate your help and support going through some of these technical and functional requirements to make sure that whenever we implement this tool into the environment, that it goes smoothly, right? We're all a team here. We all need to be on the same page. They stopped me in the middle of the call. The CISO's on the call too. And they were like, so we already own that. And we've owned it this whole time. And if you wanted that information, all you had to do was ask.
Oh dear.
I am not very good at internal politic kind of games. So I made a mistake. I didn't use words like sunsetting, right? I didn't save feelings. Basically, in an email, I advised the CISO of that team to communicate better between departments. Maybe they should hold cadence calls where everyone joins in and gets to know each other. And maybe, just maybe, they should trust one another enough to, at least at high level, let each other know what's in the tech stack on both sides of the fence.
Yeah.
So that they could compare notes. Maybe.
It reminds me a bit. It's been a while since I've had a role that required me to go to change control meetings, but that was always an eye-opening thing. Like when you get all the key players together in the same room, going over all the stuff that's going to happen in the coming days and weeks. Like how many times have we seen that happen, particularly in a large organization where like the change comes up for a system that you didn't even know existed. You're like, wait, the what? Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. We've got that on our wire. I had no idea. And good Lord, this is another conversation for another time, but asset management is such an important thing that so many organizations are bad at. Like, yeah, every time I had a client when I was still in consulting that would say, oh yeah, we've got wonderful asset management. We know everything that's on the wire. And they're like, no, you don't. I assure you, you don't actually. And so you start, flinging packets around and scanning all the things just to like come up with inventory. I remember I was at a children's hospital, very, very good children's hospital. And we did a scan and found a couple Nintendo machines on the wire. Well, at first it was like, what are Nintendo boxes doing? Or some video game console, whatever it was. I think it was a Nintendo. Well, it's a children's hospital. So where the kids are in the waiting room in chairs waiting to, give them something to do. So it wasn't that the Nintendo was on the network. It was that it was on the same part of the network as the electronic medical record and all the business systems and everything else. So you can have a Nintendo in a hospital all you want, but just make a wise choice about where you're going to put it relative to everything else. And
segmentation.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's got to
and that brings it back to OT, actually. Sorry, Will, I'll quickly add it. We talk about OT being, kind of a manufacturing thing, but biomedical engineering in healthcare, I think, is virtually the same problem, even though we use different words to describe it, like biomedical engineering. It's the same thing. You've got mission critical and life critical systems in the case of a hospital that have to live alongside of the business systems that are less critical. And so how do we segregate those things and at the same time allow them to function properly? And it's, as it turns out, it's a hard thing to do. It's segmentation, as you said. It's segmentation and
and with OT is a whole bunch of very specialized devices. So how many security challenges are introduced simply by interoperability?
Yeah.
of getting different systems trying to communicate to other different systems that were not intended to talk with each other, but you're having to kludge some of those elements together because they're from two completely different vendors.
Right. And you hope that there's some common protocol that maybe they share. In the healthcare world, it's HL7, but it's a good protocol. It does what it does, but it's in clear text. So now you're flinging all this patient information all around, all around the hospital in the clear. And back in the 90s, it said, the local area network is secure. We don't have to encrypt on the LAN because it's secure. Well, hopefully no one believes that anymore. That's been proven false for a long time. So it's an interesting thing to think about those when you have, mission and life critical and safety critical systems, and you're trying to integrate them with other systems, as y'all have said. How do we do that in a responsible way without disrupting the goals of the organization, whether it's a factory or a hospital? Either way, I mean, it's a hard thing. And as I tell people that know me well, I've been doing this for a long time, and thank goodness my hair can't get much more gray. I mean, I've lost it all. Like the stress of trying to solve these problems, it's very rewarding, but also it is a bit stressful. And I think that's why so many of us in this industry are the characters that we are.
well, keep in mind, my friend, there's a whole nother direction you can go. So
my hair turned gray, yours turned loose.
You guys are great. So it's about that time.
Yeah, I know. Well, I don't know. How do you if I would have to wrap it up, I guess the difference between OT and IT is OT used to be protected by virtue of the fact that it was isolated. Now we're connecting it to business networks at great advantage to all of us. There's good reasons why we want to do this, but it also makes protecting them much more difficult. So if you find yourself moving in that direction towards industrial control systems, understand why it's such a particular challenge, and understand why too IT has a problem gaining credibility with OT because of the long legacy of us not, as practitioners, not understanding that problem very well. But I think it's more well understood. And I think, believe it or not, I described myself as a cynic a little bit earlier, but I am still an optimist. I do think we are going to be successful in this. I hope so. So that's what I got.
Awesome.
Thank you. I'm going to look over the top of my own really big banner right here. So we did something fun, and now you have a mailing list. If you'd like to join the mailing list, that's great. Send your name and email to the form that is located at the other end of that QR code. And once a week, you will get all the social media links as to where the upcoming event will be taking place, so that you can join from YouTube, LinkedIn, add it to your calendar, and whatever your it's a pick your poison kind of list. So there's 5 different platforms that we stream to, if you weren't aware of that. And we do that in interest of people's risk appetite around their privacy. It's out of respect for you. So you can go and, you don't have to necessarily join from one or the other. It's everything that I can try to offer for you. But anyway, that's what the mailing list is. Join the mailing list. We won't spam you, and we're not going to sell stuff, but you're going to put in a fake email account anyway. So it's fine. Just do that. That'll be great. And connect with Damon Small, aka Chef. If you see him out and around, grab a picture and send it to me, and I'll send you a sticker. I'll be like, good job. He's not blurry. You caught a picture of him. Wait, where are you going next? Where are you headed to?
Next up is HuSaCon right here in Houston, Texas. HuSaCon is next week, Thursday and Friday. Me and a buddy of mine are going to be up on stage talking about artificial intelligence and its intersection with humans. So we're not talking about the tech stack so much as we are talking about how people can use AI to solve real problems. And I won't give you a spoiler, but HuSaCon next week. That's where I'll be.
Very cool. Thank you. Will, do you have some closing thoughts?
Yeah. I hope this really kind of helped some in the audience that may not know about OT and the whole concept of it's almost like a whole separate world out there that from a hacker's perspective, if you can get inside, the power of pivoting, going from one system to another becomes huge. And because it has a different philosophy and a different slant, but it is so important to our infrastructure. And every day, folks that are getting into IT, think about that, because that's yet another facet of IT that is out there to explore and grow and have job possibilities. So thank you so much for articulating this so well and giving such a real nice view of that. It really appreciate it. It was awesome.
I had great fun. This is wonderful. I am passionate about this, and I would be talking about it anyway. Thanks so much for having me. It was a pleasure being here. You guys are awesome, and thanks to everyone who joined in as well.
Thanks. So. Yeah, we love our audience, because we always say we'd have fun if you didn't show up, but it's more fun because you're here.
Right? Right. Yeah. Exactly.
I am self-sustaining entertainment. Okay, like I can talk to a wall and have a good time, kind of situation.
You guys, I entertain myself regularly. Yeah.
Next week we're gonna have Jonathan Kimmett join us on the Coffee Table Talk. So look for that event announcement. Go back, hit rewind, pause, go back, grab the email QR code, and you'll get all the announcements on Mondays. Anyhow, thank you guys so much for being a great audience. Thank you so much to Damon and Will. As always, I just appreciate that you keep showing up. I keep sending the invites and you keep appearing. And I am so delighted every time. I'm like, oh, good.
This is fun.
He's here.
He's still here.
And at GurCon, I got a t-shirt, right?
I know. It was so fun. Okay, so these are the first time that we did the t-shirts, right? And brought them with us to GurCon. Y'all, they were gone so fast, I didn't even get one.
Your own bloody shirt, and you didn't even get it. That's nice. Yeah, well,
I didn't even get
a good problem to have. Yeah,
it is. Will, do you mind being a model? Can you turn around and show the back? The back is my favorite. This was
as
John
long
Davis.
as I don't take my green screen down. Well, no.
Yeah, don't do that then.
Yeah,
don't take the green screen down. But on the back, it's adorable. It says "Grab a cup and circle up," and it's like in a circle. It's so cute.
Nice.
I think I have. Just a minute. I can share this. I know I've got it. Right.
We had such a good time. It was great. I promise we're gonna sign off here in a minute, but we got to talk about this really thing.
There we go. Oh, come on.
Are you telling me that I would have to change my Quarks Bar T-shirt? One of my favorite T-shirts.
Absolutely not. You don't have to do that at all. Okay. I mean, if you want to put the T-shirt up in a frame or something on your wall.
My mom made me a T-shirt quilt. I had a bunch of old T-shirts, and I have a way to retire old T-shirts. There you go. Nice. That's brilliant.
Nice. Love it.
Yeah. There we go.
Man. Isn't that great? I love it. All right. Thank you again so much, and thank you to our audience. Y'all have a fantastic weekend. We will see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Same bat. No, English. Yes, I did that. Same bat time, same bat channel. That's how That's how you speak words. Anyhow, we love you all so much. We'll see you next time.
Cheerio.